Order. First of all, I'd like to apologize for our tardiness from coming out. We were having some discussions and closed, and we're going to have to go back to close later. But if you'll all rise and join me in this Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank all of you for being here this evening. First, I need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening. So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yay. 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 Opposed, nay, or no? Okay, the agenda's been approved. I need a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for the September 18th, 2014 meeting.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying yay.
Yay.
Yay. Yes.
Yay. Opposed, no. Again, the motion passes. I need a motion to approve a Board of Education meeting minutes for the September 29th, 2014 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying yay. Yay.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Thank you for saying yes, Dr. Kinder. I like that.
Madam Secretary, I need to abstain.
I abstain as well.
Okay, we have 2 abstains.
Dominique, you weren't there?
Do you want to abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, there's 3 abstains. All right. Again, motion is carried. All right, next is patron comments. This evening we have some patron comments. I'm going to read the rules for the patron comments. To address the board, they've completed a blue patron comment card. The board values and appreciates your taking the time to provide your comments. As a reminder to those who are making comments, it is the general practice of the board not to respond to your comments at this time, but if appropriate, to provide a written response within a reasonable amount of time. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and I'm going to have 2 speakers that are going to come up together with a group that I invited to stand behind them. I'm going to allow each of the speakers, Ms. Kettering, 3 minutes. Okay. All right? And so at this time, if I could have Megan Landauer and Jack Berry come forward, please. And any of the other students who would like to stand in support. Megan and Jack, which of the 2 would like to start?
I'll go.
Okay, Megan, very good. Go ahead, please.
Hello, my name is Megan Landauer. I am a senior at Lafayette High School, and I am co-president of its Gay Straight Alliance. You may be familiar with the term transgender. For those of you who don't know, a transgender person is someone whose biological sex does not match the gender he or she feels inside. Now, transgender is not an all-inclusive term for people unsatisfied with their biological sex. Gender identity and gender expression are the terms that include everybody, including cisgender people, people who do not feel like they were born with the incorrect biological sex, and transgender people. Gender identity is how a person identifies when it comes to his or her gender, while gender expression is how a person expresses his or her gender, feminine, masculine, etc. Yet gender identity and gender expression are not included in the anti-bullying policy. Policy 2130, the anti-bullying policy in Rockwood's student handbook, comes from the best intentions of Rockwood administration and school board. It allows students to safely learn without fear of physical, verbal, and sexual harassment. As the policy states, the school system will promptly investigate all complaints of unlawful harassment or unlawful discrimination because of race, color, sex, national origin, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, or perceived sexual orientation. to promptly take appropriate action to protect individuals from further harassment or discrimination, and if it determines that unlawful harassment or discrimination occurs, to promptly and appropriately discipline any student, teacher, administrator, or any other school personnel who is found to have violated this policy, and or take other appropriate actions reasonably calculated to end the harassment discrimination. It may appear as if that there is no problem with how the policy stands, but sexual orientation has nothing to do with gender identity and expression. Gender is how you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is how you feel towards others. According to transequality.org, the National Transgender Discrimination Survey reports that 78% of respondents who are out as transgender while in school indicated that they had been harassed on the basis of their gender identity. 35% of the harassment escalated to physical assault. 15% of all students even dropped out and escaped school due to bullying. Those who did stay in school had a significantly lower GPA, were more likely to miss school out of concern for their safety, and were less likely to plan on continuing their education. Most alarmingly, 51% of survey respondents who had been bullied attempted suicide. With this in mind, I propose that the school board add gender identity and gender expression protection into policy 2130 so the public can see how the school board promotes the security of all students while they receive their education. Thank you.
Jack.
Hello, my name is Jack Berry, and I am co-president and founder of the Lafayette High School Gay Straight Alliance, an after-school group that pushes for the equal treatment of people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. Rockwood Harassment Policy 2130 protects students from harassment based on race, color, national origin, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, and perceived sexual orientation. While this policy does assure protection for some students, it does not explicitly state protection for students that identify or express their gender alternately than the one they were assigned at birth. The bullying and harassment that accompanies that lack of protection leads to fear among students who identify as transgendered, as well as those too fearful of persecution by peers and teachers to be able to be openly happy with themselves. On a daily basis, I have witnessed slurs thrown around commonly at Lafayette High School. I personally know several students, to remain anonymous, who are fearful for their own safety to openly be transgendered in Rockwood high schools due to the mistreatment they see of other students in their same situation. It is Rockwood's obligation to assure that students in their schools feel safe enough in their schools to continue their studies. According to the Center for Disease Control, 8 out of 10 LGBT students were verbally harassed, and 1 in 5 was physically assaulted as of 2009. And Rockwood schools hold true to this pattern, unfortunately. If a transgender student does not feel safe at school, environment generally associated with learning and tolerance, where will they feel safe? So I ask, on behalf of all transgender students and the Lafayette High School Gay Straight Alliance, to please grant transgender students and staff explicit protection from harassment based on Rockwood policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your comments. All right, we have Miss Elizabeth Schmidt to speak on board procedures.
My name is Elizabeth Schmidt, and I live in Ellisville. I track board procedures and transparency issues in West County for a variety of different reasons. And often I'm alerted to a meeting that took place. I'm often listening to audio, but I was treated to video last time for your last meeting, although it lacked a certain amount of action. It was nice to see video instead of having to listen to audio. What I wanted to say was, I see a lot of councils and boards sit and deliberate. And what I found at your last meeting, I found to be unusual. I want to commend Director Paul for bringing up a policy issue. And what I saw then was a 20-minute explanation of why the policy perhaps wasn't necessary. Not an actual discussion among the board members, but almost, excuse me, Superintendent, a monopolization of the discussion from a staff perspective. I didn't see much exchange between the board members. This really concerned me. What also concerned me was that there seemed to be a procedure that you had to follow to bring up a policy issue, something called a policy in need document. And then as I listened further, I realized that it seemed like a great deal of the board was unfamiliar with what it was and how it worked. And I found that unusual, and I know that some of you are new, but still there's probably some carryover from a previous board. I take it that policy initiatives aren't generated very often amongst the board. That's why it concerned me when there was no true give and take back and forth between the directors. And I have to really hand it to Director Paul for wading in and pressing her issue that there needs to be a policy regarding dress code, because from her perspective and what she had heard from teachers and apparently parents as well, it's inconsistent and it leaves you open to possible liability issues. As a school board, I would hope that it would be the place of any director to bring an issue up at a public meeting without having to complete a form that apparently no one is aware of exactly how it works. Because as I listened to the discussion, one member even recommended that you all have training. So thank you. And I commend the students who spoke before me. That was very brave.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next, we move to superintendent and board comments. Dr. Knost.
Number of very good things to report regarding the school district. Wild Horse Elementary 5th grade student Hannah Ohms will be traveling to New York this weekend to play at Carnegie Hall. She is one of 29 students from around the world to get the honor. Hannah received the honor after winning the silver medal in the World Piano Competition in the Young Artists Division. So congratulations to Hannah Ohms. October the 2nd is National Custodial Workers Recognition Day. Our custodians are an integral part of our school community. School custodians not only maintain the building, they play an essential role in the health, attitude, and pride of our students and staff. Thanks to the custodians in Rockwood, I know that when I travel around to all the schools that I do, I'm always impressed with how clean the halls are and how shiny our buildings are, which is helps the environment be conducive to students' health and safety and learning. So thanks to all the custodians in Rockwood for all the work that they do. Marquette High School French teacher Della Thompson has been named the Distinguished Foreign Language Educator of Missouri. She will now represent the Show Me State at a regional conference in Minneapolis. Congratulations to Della. Center for Creative Learning teacher Susan Richmond has been awarded the 2014 Healthy Woman Award from St. Luke's Hospital. The award strives to recognize and celebrate women who not only take steps to improve their own health, but also inspire better health in our community. Eureka High School freshman Deepa Bhuvanagiri, and I hope that I said that right, forgive me if I didn't, Deepa Bhuvanagiri, was recognized as the National Association of Engineers Anniversary Celebration in Washington, D.C. She won a video competition in her age group and won $5,000. The contest invited participants to submit a 1 to 2 minute video showing engineering's impact on society in the last 50 years and to project its contributions in the next 50 years. Congratulations to Deepa. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
All right.
I think your did you say it was Custodial Workers Appreciation
Yeah.
Month or week?
October 2nd is Recognition Day.
But that keeps in line with one of the comments I was going to make. I was contacted by Paul Stanley, the president of the RNEA, the Teachers Union, and brought up that we have, I think, about quarterly dinners with their leadership. And I think it would be appropriate, in keeping with my motto of all students, all staff, all parents, all community, that we open that up to other groups, the nurses union leadership, the custodian leaders leadership, and other staff groups that would like to meet on a regular basis.
I would second that. I try to meet with any group that asks they want a board member present, so if any of those other groups wish to have a board member, or we can't do 4, because then it constitutes a meeting, but the more openness, the better. So I agree.
That's a great idea.
We do
So
get
contact
invited
us.
to a lot of things. Before we have our next board meeting, we were, and this, I think we're going to talk a little bit about this in just a few minutes, but I have the privilege on the 14th, I'll be eating lunch with my grandchildren at Blevins Elementary as part of the invitation we received, I think, today. That's school lunch week or something that, as board members, we like those kinds of, I know you're all looking at me thinking he just wants a free meal. I honestly, I do look forward to that, and because being in the schools and around our students is one of the richest rewards we receive as being a board member, so I plan on doing that. Dr. Kinder?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Dole?
Most of you probably from my history know what I'm about to say. I'm a big supporter of and very involved in the Boy Scouts of America program here in the St. Louis area. And one of the merit badges required to make Eagle Scout is citizenship in the community. And we do have one young man here today from Troop 621 in Chesterfield who's here to fulfill that requirement. So I just wanted to commend him on that effort and welcome to the board.
Can you stand up?
Would you stand, please?
There you go. Thank you.
You might even decide that someday you want to run for a school board. All right? Any other? Yes, Dominique?
I have a couple things. First, I'd like to thank Crestview for having me out for the education walks this week. It was a fantastic experience going from class to class, and I wanted to also mention one hardworking Lafayette student, Richie Reddy. He was conducting a field experiment pertaining to choice and the psychological motivators that impacted that choice, that myself and my kids are now a part of because it took place at Daniel Boone Library, and I chose Spring. I would also like to say I'm glad the Sunshine Law was added to tonight's agenda. For those who didn't get the revise and might have been here to see the update on the dress code that was on earlier, I want to apologize because I did not add that to the agenda. But I was informed that it was an assumption that for it to be added, but I didn't place it on the agenda, and so I'm sorry if you came out here and if there was any confusion. Lastly, I would also like to comment on a previous meeting as far as who the public contacts in regards to their concerns. Yes, you're to contact your teachers and principals and superintendents, your union organizations, and also your Board of Education directors. Others may have a lot going on, but if you feel like you hit a brick wall or have not gone in a direction that's satisfying, never ever stay in the shadows if you feel you cannot contact us. I want to say openly and publicly, we are your duly elected officials and we're here to do your bidding for you. If you want to stay in the shadows and it does not make you a coward, it makes you want to understand the roles that you went to the poll for and voted on for representation. And if you want a specific policy looked at, I'm saying for myself, and I'm sure the other board members would do the same, they would step into the light for you, as I've already started to do, and try to have your concerns addressed. And it was an interesting conversation regarding the pen, and I don't want to spend any more time on that, but to be clear, if you come to us and there is a motion that is not seconded, I apologize in advance, but it is at that set time, that is your voice being silenced, not mine. And the superintendent serves at the pleasure of the board, but we serve at the pleasure of our constituents. So take note and make sure that you are paying attention if your issues are being addressed or met with a combative nature. But I'm here to represent all of Rockwood, That means all of Rockwood. There's not a specific group that I'm leaning towards at all. Whether you're a teacher, student, staff member, parent, Jefferson City legislator, all of Rockwood. I've had some teachers come to me regarding their frustration on Common Core. The Board of Education can't do anything about that. That's a Jeff City issue, so when they come down here to speak to us, it would probably behoove us to listen so that if we have an issue, they'll listen. But Rockwood's not an island. You elected us for a reason. We're not here to push agendas. We're here to push Rockwood forward in a positive direction with innovative ideas. And I want you to know that I want to hear your problems. I've said this time and time again. When I come in contact with people, problems does not mean something is wrong. It means that we still have room for improvement and to grow. And so I'm sure all of the board wants to hear you. I'm saying for myself, I definitely want to hear you, and I will try to have any and all your problems addressed. Thank you.
Okay,
I have one.
Dr. Kinder.
I won't take quite as long, I think. I was in the doctor's office 2 days ago, and usually when you get in the doctor's office, you have 15 or 20 minutes before they ever see you, or longer. So I picked up a magazine. It was a St. Louis Family magazine, which I'd never seen before, and opened it up, and they talked about their 2014 Excellence in Education Awards that they give out. So I decided I would thumb through and see if there was anybody I knew, since I'm still in the field of education. And lo and behold, as I thumbed through there, one of our teachers, Doug Russell, who is at Pond and used to be at Eureka High School, was one of the teachers that they gave an award to. I said, hey, that's really great. Then I went to the administrators, because I work a lot with administrators and future administrators, and where I work at, and the first 3 people on that list were either my former students or currently in the program that I work in. But one that struck my eye particularly was Dr. Rodney Lewis. He's a Baldwin Elementary school principal. He won first place in a tie for the Excellence in Education Award. And if you ever get a chance, take a look at the St. Louis Family Magazine. It's a nice article on Rodney and some other people that are outstanding educators in the field. And I'm so proud of Rodney, and I'm sure you guys are proud of Rodney also. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to take a point of personal here. This past week, we lost a person that I held in very high esteem, Mary Riedel Muffler, who had worked in the Rockwood district for many, many years. I'm going to give one personal anecdote. Back in the early 90s, I coordinated an exchange between the Rockwood School District and a school district in Russia. One of my very most favorite recollections from that sponsorship of that exchange was going with Dr. Riedel up to Hannibal, Missouri with the Russian students, and she was very proud to take them through the schools where she had gone to school, and very proud of her hometown of Hannibal. So I would feel bad if we didn't at least recognize the fact that she gave many years. She did move over to Parkway toward the latter part, but she gave many years of hard, dedicated work and service to the Rockwood district, and I appreciate you listening to me, because I think she deserves at least that much of a mention. Thank you, I appreciate it. On to a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted for this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Anyone have any comment or question about the consent agenda?
Yeah, I would just like to have Tim highlight the $468,000 budget adjustment. We spoke earlier, and if you want to come up. And just because it's such a large amount, just to clarify, we spoke and you approved, it's a refund. It was something that was refunded for last fiscal year, and we're going to spend it in this fiscal year. So it wasn't spent last year, we're going to spend it this year, and we're just moving it. It's no additional dollars.
We had some technology equipment that was ordered and had to be sent back because it was not compatible. And so we got a reimbursement for that. And we received that this year, and typically if we're on a cash basis, we would have had a budget transfer, budget increase in revenue and a budget increase in expenditures, because we're going to be paying. We reimbursed it from last year, and now we're going to be spending it. But because we do the accrual, we recognize that receipt last year, so it's already in our fund balances, and now we're asking for the ability to go ahead and spend it this year. So
The need still exists, even though the technology did not meet our needs the first go-round.
That's right.
I'd like to also mention that the charitable contribution, the donation podiums to Rockwood Valley Middle School, that's by Katie Sheridan and her husband. Katie's an employee of the either us or special ed, I'm not sure which. That's a nice gesture. We get a lot of donations and we don't recognize those enough. That was a very nice donation of those podiums for students at Rockwood Valley.
Yeah, sometimes they get put into consent. It's nice to point that out. Any other questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please say yay.
Yes.
Opposed, no. All right, Ms. Vito, that passed. Agenda items, Ms. Fisher, if you'll come forward, we have I mentioned this earlier. I need a motion to approve the proclamation designating October 13th through 17th, 2014 as National School Lunch Week. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
And it's moved and seconded. Now, Ms. Fisher, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Knost, members of cabinet. I'm Carmen Fisher, Director of Child Nutrition Services and Warehouse, and I want to thank you for recognizing National School Lunch Week, October 13th through the 17th of 2014. The theme this year is Get in the Game with School Lunch. We have featured menus that promote the importance of balancing healthy eating with physical activity and exercise. National School Lunch Week is a perfect time to celebrate all of the healthy options we're serving every day in Rockwood schools. School lunches are healthier than ever, with more fruits, vegetables, and more whole grains, less fat, and sodium. During the 2013-14 school year, Rockwood Child Nutrition Services served over 1,483,613 reimbursable lunches to our students. Our department has worked hard since 2001 to gradually improve the nutrition of our school meals, including switching to whole grain buns at the elementary level first in 2005. In 2006, elementary schools scheduled recess before lunch so that students could enjoy, release some of their energy before coming in to sit down to eat lunch. We added deli lines to our high schools by 2007. In 2010, we began purchasing locally from farmers within the area. This year, we've started Taste Test Tuesdays at the elementary and middle schools and on Thursdays at the high schools, giving all students the opportunity to try new recipes or menu items that will be offered on upcoming menus. We strive to provide students with healthy options in addition to recognizing that all foods can fit into a healthy diet. Child nutrition is our business. Our passion is educating and introducing our students to new foods to fuel their minds and bodies so they can realize their potential. I'd like to invite you to lunch at any time when you're at any of the schools, and thank you for your time this evening.
Any questions?
I just want to compliment you. I've complimented you several times. You have a very difficult job. We were just at Ridge Meadows the other day. We met the cafeteria workers, and fruit was everywhere. It was
And they were
great.
proud of it.
Yes.
They were proud of the fruit.
Cutting a honeydew melon, that's a lot of work.
It is.
So, very good job.
Thank you.
We have a proclamation here. Ms. Mondel, would you like to read it? It's
Can I vote first?
the main reason I'm asking you is because I can't see it.
If you're going to give
You
me,
want me to read it?
well, I can't
Okay,
see
the
that very
National
well.
School Lunch Program has served our nation admirably for over 60 years through advanced practice and nutrition education. And whereas the National School Lunch Program is dedicated to the health and well-being of our nation's children, and whereas the National School Lunch Program has been joined through the years by many other excellent child feeding programs, and there is evidence of continued need for nutrition education and awareness of the value of school nutrition programs. Now therefore, we, the Board of Education of the Rockwood School District, do hereby proclaim the week of October 13th through 17th, 2014, as National School Lunch Week, and we encourage all residents to become aware and concerned about their children's and their own nutrition habits in hopes of achieving a more healthy citizenry for today and the future. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set me hand? I'm sounding like a pirate. And cause the official seal of the Board of Education of the Rockwood School District to be affixed. All right? I think there's one more sentence there, but it was getting blurry. Done at the board meeting on the second day of October 2014. All right, is the board ready to endorse that proclamation?
Yes?
Okay. All in favor, say yay.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Ms. Fisher, for your patience and not laughing when I read that wrong, probably. Next on the agenda is the Community Outreach and Public Engagement Committee. I'm not sure who this evening is speaking as a spokesperson or speaking on behalf of this committee, made up of Mrs. Mondel, Dr. Kinder, Mr. Castle, Ms. Cranston, and Dr. Knost.
We're handing out the meeting minutes from our last COPE meeting, which was on Monday, and we talked about several things, what Dr. Hargadine is going to talk about right after this, right? CSIP and the advisory committees. We also did a follow-up to our board retreat. So we listened to what everybody said, and we have now looked at some of these dates for our upcoming board meetings all the way till March 26th, and you will see in highlight, in essence, once a month, we are now going to have some sort of speaker or something that is going to be a topic that we all talked about that we felt like we needed further education on. So you will see Sunshine Law tonight, finances, PIN process, legislative update, and VIC. And we are open to more of these, but we felt like once a month was probably a good start, since you're going to kind of watch the agenda each of those nights to make sure we're not here for 4 hours. So that's what we've been working on. Anyone have any questions or comments like, good job, COPE committee?
Good job.
Good job, co-committee.
Did you have any rhyme or reason with your order, or just kind of
No.
came
Did
out?
we? No, well, that's not true. We did. Go
There
ahead.
was a little bit.
Finances.
Obviously, the Sunshine Law was one I think that sounded like everybody was interested in, so it was clear, I think we already had that on there when we were discussing this. The finances, I suggested that because in either the next October meeting or the November meeting, I'm going to have Tim outline some of our facility budget needs and kind of start that discussion. So I thought that was maybe the next appropriate thing to discuss after that, do a financial review. I think the policies was kind of random as far as that was just the time to have it then. February 5th, the legislative update, because the legislative session starts again in January, so there would probably be things to discuss by then. And then March seemed appropriate to discuss VIC, because maybe as far as our continued involvement in that program going forward, that's the time when we're going to be talking about seats and spaces and so on and so forth. So it wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason, but some.
Any way to push up the pin discussion?
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to get shot. I mean, so we heard tonight that's something that we need education on, any chance. But if that delays finances at the time when we're going to be seeing draft budgets for next year, yeah, you can only do. But
We only have one November.
Would there be any opposition to the taking a look at the agenda, and if we see a lighter agenda earlier than January 8th, to place the pin discussion? We could try to do it that way. Is the board okay with that?
I actually think that's kind of what we said, wasn't it? That just
This is just
it was actually viewed as not as big of a presentation type topic, more of a discussion clarification topic. So I think that's we could probably do that very soon.
I'll do my best to see if we can't get that on October 16th if the agenda's light. If the board's okay. Anybody have any problems with that? Okay, Ms. Beadle, you'll have to remind me I said that, or I'll have to watch the tape. All right? All right, very good, thank you.
Bill, this should answer the question of how come Sunshine Law was on the agenda tonight. It was because that was what you guys requested, and we worked it out.
Right. I do remember from the retreat, that was probably, if not the most often discussed, it was one of them. So, all right. Any other discussion on the COPE committee? Okay, let's move to, I need a motion to approve the charge from the Board of Education to the 4 CSIP advisory committees. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second?
Second. Okay, Dr. Hargenai, thank you.
PowerPoint?
She's like,
I could just wing it, but. Okay. So, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here to talk a little bit about our CSIP process. You'll notice that we are required by the state of Missouri to have a CSIP within the district, and it is an ongoing written document that allows for the overall improvement of our school district and our educational programs. Again, this is required by the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but we've had CSIP for many years in the Rockwood District. The Rockwood District works to continuously improve the quality of the schools and our programs in the school, and the CSIP document is what guides us in those improvements. The Comprehensive School Improvement Plan directs the overall improvements of our schools and educational programs. This guiding document contains goals, objectives, and strategies related to several different issues. Each year, the goals and strategies are reviewed and make sure that they are still timely and appropriate. CSIP is a living document which is continuously evaluated and updated as we progress towards the accomplishment of those objectives. The Rockwood's previous CSIP was developed in 2008 and was in effect through June of 2014. The planning stages for our current CSIP, the 2014-19 document, utilized the strategic planning process that involves staff and community members to ensure that the plan guided the district, and the CSIP was approved by the board in March of 2014. Our CSIP process, is directly tied to our district's mission and vision statements and our core values. And I know you know these, but just for review, our mission and vision statements, we do whatever it takes to ensure all students realize their potential. And by continuously improving in every aspect of our performance, the Rockwood School District empowers students to command their future. You will find both of those things throughout our entire CSIP document. Our core values are to promote and model ethical values and good character as the foundation of our performance, build a safe and caring school community, and provide meaningful and challenging academic programs that connect all students to learning and honors their differences. And we are to engage all stakeholders in shared responsibility for learning, character, and climate. You'll notice all of those also are reflected within our CSIP document. We have 5 focus areas for CSIP. The first is student learning. All students will demonstrate academic growth and be well prepared for their future. There are 3 goal champions for this area. It's myself, it's Dr. Whipke, and Dr. Brown. Those are the 3 goal champions, and you'll hear a little bit more about goal champions later on. Our second area is highly effective staff. To recruit, attract, develop, and retain highly effective staff to carry out the Rockwood School District's mission, goals, and objectives. And Dr. Katie Rebelet is the goal champion for that area. Our goal champion for district finance is Tim Rooney, and that area is to ensure efficient operations and accountability and responsible use of district resources. The fourth area is school climate, to create a safe and caring learning environment that includes a positive school culture and positive collaboration and communication throughout the school and community. Again, that is our climate, and that is Mrs. Beth Canese. And governance, to govern the Rockwood School District in an efficient and effective manner, providing leadership and representation to the benefit of the students, staff, and patrons of the district, and Dr. Knost is in charge of that. Our process for our CIP plan for now is that I will have met with all of the goal champions. We have outlined all of the CIP goals and objectives and strategies that we had that were developed last year under Katie Rebelet when we developed the original CSIP. We have taken all of those and outlined those over the 5-year period. So during that meeting and subsequent meetings afterwards, we took all of those strategies and laid them out on a 5-year plan. So some of them are starting this year in the 14-15 school year. Some of them were starting next year or the following year. We want to make sure that we are not that we are fiscally responsible, so we're not bombarding any one year over the other, and that we are valuing our human resources so that we have enough people to actually work on the committees to have the work done. So we laid out that timeline for the next 5 years. You'll see that several things are listed under the 14-15 school year. That does not mean that they will be completed in the 14-15 school year, but that does mean that we will be starting them in the 14-15 school year. Those goal champions have outlined all of those strategies, and we have all of that in place at this time. The Goal Champions will also create an advisory committee. The advisory committee's goal is to monitor the implementation and completion of all of those strategies that we just talked about. And those committees will also allow for our parent and stakeholder engagement. To be on one of those committees, there will be an application process, and that application will begin on October 8th and run through October 17th. You will find that application in the West News magazine, through our Twitter account, through our Facebook page, through our app, any other method that we have of communicating that out to all of our parents and patrons. And we are asking for everyone that is interested to fill out an application to serve on the committee. The committee members will be chosen from the applications on October 21st, and then those committee members that are chosen for that overarching advisory committee will receive a welcoming letter by October 31st. And again, that committee is your oversight committee. It is the one that is advisory, and it will oversee all of the work to be done. That's not the committee that rolls up their sleeves and gets the work done. They're making sure and they're asking those tough and hard questions of what we're doing. The Goal Champions will create those working committees. That's the next layer. That's the committees that really rolls up their sleeves and gets the job done, and they're the ones that are working on it. Those committees will be formed after the advisory committee. If there are people that want to serve on both, they're certainly welcome to do that, or they can serve on one or the other. And those committees are an additional way to have other parents and stakeholders involved within the process. And then, of course, the Goal Champions will work with and support everyone that is working on those committees, and they are the ultimate person that's responsible for making sure that all of those strategies are completed. So our communication plan, I've been on the world tour, if you will. I have presented this to our administrators at the July Administrator Conference. We've also presented to the PDC committee, the CAC committee, the Learning and Support Services Department, and the Curriculum Department. And of course, now you tonight. So it's kind of made its way around. Today was PDC, so this is my second round of this today. And then we will be reviewing it with all of the Administrative Council at the meeting on October 9th. We have a CSIT page. It is on the Outsider, so it's on our Rockwood website, so that we can be as transparent as possible through this process. So that page has all of the information about CSIT, and it will also link to the committee page that will have all of the documents from those advisory committees. So any meeting agenda, meeting notes, anything that has gone on in any of those advisory committees will all be placed on those pages, so that anyone, if you can't serve on the committee for whatever reason, if you're whatever obligation outside of your school life or home life, and you cannot serve on one of those committees, you can certainly stay in touch with and see and monitor everything that's going on. There will also be a feedback loop, so anybody, whether on the committee or off the committee, they can also let us know their thoughts and feelings about things that are happening. So we want to try to make this as transparent as possible and keep people in the loop of what we're doing. So that page is already up and live. And then as those committees are formed, that will also be on there and on those committee pages.
Question, Ms. Paul?
Yes, as far as the governance, I spoke to MSBA, and since there's a lot of the objectives here that are directly related to the board, they suggested that a board member be on as far as a goal champion. Could they be added? I don't know if it would be like the board president or the vice president or what have you, but that's what they recommended.
I would, that would be something that you guys, because the governance goal is really your goal, so if that would be your pleasure and that's what you would like to do, that's absolutely something that you guys could talk about and talk with Dr. Knost on.
And if the board would prefer to oversee that, I would yield that. No problem.
I'm just saying what they recommended.
No, I think you're right. I was going to ask broader about, is there anything that would keep a board member from being on each one of those committees? I think a continuous, or in this case, they call it a comprehensive improvement program, is really very important to the district. And
Absolutely.
not to interfere with the committees, but rather to get the first-hand feedback to bring it back.
No, I don't know of any reason why you couldn't serve, so please fill out the application. Now, I don't know if we'll choose, no, I'm kidding you. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think just because we're on the board doesn't mean we give up our rights as a citizen.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't preclude you from serving.
You know, maybe what you could do, because I sit on a couple committees right now, maybe what you could do as a suggestion is when you have a calendar of when all the meetings are, any of us could attend at any time, is that?
Yeah, and all
something
of that will
would
be
doable?
posted on the site, so you will know when all of the meetings are. So if you'd rather be a part of it in that way.
I'm not saying you
can
can't
come to
be
any
on-
No,
yeah.
absolutely. You could
I'm not
choose
saying you
however
can't
you
be on.
wish to serve. So if you wanted to be on a committee and be a part of that committee, you can absolutely do that. If you'd rather just drop into all of the committees and see what's going on there, you could serve that way as well.
I mean, I highly recommend that. I sit on the curriculum advisory committee. I was at that meeting today for 2.5 hours. I'm there mostly as a parent, but the things that you learn are very important. And we get updates, but you certainly
Right.
hear everything that's going on, and there are lots of great things going on, which is why I'm always so happy most of the time.
It's very difficult to hear, even for us.
I know,
I was
sorry.
gonna say, when these committees are chosen, you know, I've been around now for a while, can we mix up the committees and get some new faces on them? You know, because I see the same old folks, maybe they're the only ones that are
Sure.
submitting their names, but, you know, let's get some
Absolutely.
fresh input. You know, we have
And
a
that's why
group
we're sending it
develop
out as many places as we can for people to see that. And if you know of anyone that hasn't served that you would like to see on them, and, you know, talk them in and recruit them into filling out one of the applications, absolutely.
And that was kind of a tie into my other question. You mentioned some of our channels that we're going to distribute this through is through West News, our Rockwood app, our Twitter account.
Our Facebook, the e-news,
We're gonna email
the
it?
website. Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm more responsive to email. I don't know what other people's choice. Okay.
That comes the
Our
email,
principal.
right.
Okay, good.
Sherry, you weren't suggesting the gold champions be changed, were you?
No, I was,
Okay.
no, I was
talking
the
about
committee
member
members.
members.
No,
She's
see,
talking
committee
about-
members are kind of stale, no offense to anyone.
If
You know,
I-
you know, we see the same folks.
If I
Mix it
saw
up,
that
get some new
correctly,
ideas.
though, there's an application form, so it's really open to any.
Absolutely, it's open to anyone and
Right.
everyone that would be interested,
Right.
yes.
So if
And,
you,
we're trying to keep those committees so that they're not huge committees. We would like them to be around 10 to 12, but
Right.
if we have a large number, we'll have to try to figure out how we would
Right.
deal with that. And maybe we just offer them to be on one of the subcommittees or working committees as well. But,
But
it'll be interesting to see the response that we get.
I want to go back to Ms. Paul's point. You were making a statement about the governance aspect of the CSIP, that you would like to have seen a board member as a gold champion on that. Am I
Well,
right?
that's what the MSBA
Right.
recommended, because all of the majority of our goals are board specific, is what they said.
Okay.
So they should, like a code, there should be, either a superintendent and a board member, or the board member since they're both board specific.
Ms. Pito, what would be the procedure for us putting somebody,
Yeah.
fill out a form? If you're a board member that's interested in it, get the application, explain that you, as a board member, you'd like to be part of the governance, a gold champion for governance, and then that'll be considered.
We
All
can
right.
absolutely do that.
All right.
That's
I
that would be-
disagree with that. I think we have the perfect person, the superintendent as a governance. He can get to all of us quicker than any board member can get to anybody else. I can disagree with it. Let him be, he should be the governance person.
Just
I was
a
gonna say, we
point.
can
What
do
the
whatever
MSBA
your pleasure
Yeah.
is, so that's
Yeah,
up to you.
let-
If you were to contact the MSBA, what they were saying is the gold champion is just in regards to the implementation of.
Correct.
Correct.
That is correct.
And so they were saying, we are responsible for ourselves because there are very specific things that we have set for ourselves as far as there are board specific goals.
Correct.
And this isn't my recommendation. I know you guys have a problem with that, but this says, the MSBA said that the board, since they're board-specific goals, should have one of us, whether that be the board president or whoever, as a co-champion or whatever, however we're going to be structured.
I don't think I said I had a problem with anything. I think the perfect person is in place. And sometimes MSBA makes suggestions, but it doesn't mean you go straight down the line with MSBA suggestions. It's that simple. So I'm not having trouble with it. I think it's in the proper place. I think you've chosen the right person. But if the board disagrees, that's fine too.
So let's wait, if this is all right, let's wait, see if anyone applies, any board member applies to be a part of the governance, and then we can make that decision or cross that bridge. Dr. Hargenine, I'll ask you to bring it back to us as a board, should that be the case.
That would be fine.
All right?
I'd be
Is
glad to do
Is
that.
that good for everybody?
Is there the update, the only update is going to be in May?
the advisory committee will meet 4 times throughout the year, and then the work committees will meet on, depending on whatever those committees are. Some of those committees will mandate more meetings, some of them will be less meetings. But those will happen throughout the school year, and then we will give an update in May to the board on exactly what has been done throughout the school year, what our status is, where we are, and where we're still going. So that will all happen in May.
Is there no way to have like a midpoint? Because May is pretty much the end of the school year, or whatever the board thinks, as far as the progress and update.
We could. The reason why we chose May was because as we're working through those, people are busy, and so asking parents and patrons to meet on a really regular basis sometimes doesn't work. So when we want to have really good participation, we do have to spread those meetings out. So if we move that up, there's a possibility that we may have only had 1 or 2 meetings at that point, and then there's really not a lot to report. So that's why we chose May, so that we would have a substantial amount to report to you, but we will do whatever you would prefer us to do.
Well, sometime in the interim, if we go through Dr. Canosa, say, gee, we'd like an update, I take it you'd be willing to do that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, we will.
That's easy.
Yeah, that's,
Absolutely. And typically, school districts usually do a report on CSIP, one in spring, one in the fall, winter. But that's a great suggestion. I mean, just like anything else, if anything that administration is overseeing and the board needs an update on it, just ask. Glad we bring it forth.
Dr. Hargadine?
You could also, if you are serving as on any of those committees as a board member, when you give your board comments, you could give whatever updates
Right.
happening in the committee that you're in as well.
Even if
you need
we-
another feedback method.
Right, I think you're right. I think if we can, I would encourage board members to apply or sign up, or whatever the right word is, and I'm not terribly hung up whether you're just on the committee or whether you're a goal champion. If you're there in the room, you won't get ignored. But our participation will help bring that information back firsthand, and I would encourage everyone to do that.
I would caution us to not be too opinionated in those meetings because we tend to stifle other people's opinions. So perhaps we need to be a fly on the wall and only offer our opinion if they really need it.
So, just to review, I thought I heard in this discussion that if any of us, as the calendar is placed out there and is public, if any of us as board members wanted to attend any of these just to observe, we're welcome to do that.
Absolutely.
I wanted to reemphasize that. I didn't want
Correct.
that to get lost in our discussion there.
And they can also apply to be on any committee.
Right, and you can also
Correct.
formally apply to be on the committee. We're citizens as well as board members, so. Thank you, Dr. Hargadine. I
I
appreciate
think
it.
there's a motion.
Oh, yeah, there is a motion. Started to dismiss you before we voted.
It's
Any
okay.
other questions or discussion? Thank you for keeping me on cue. All right, all in favor of the motion signify by saying yay.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ms. Pito, now.
Thank you.
Dr. Hargadine, thank you. Next on the agenda is an information discussion item about the Sunshine Law. Our legal counsel, Mrs. Lisa Stump of Lashley and Bear, has graciously been patient enough to prepare a PowerPoint and speak to us.
Can Ron turn it up? I can't hear.
Yeah, he did once.
He's at the top.
Is that the
Yeah,
top?
it picks that up too. It says,
Okay.
okay, thank. It won't hurt Dr. Kinder's ears. He's deaf already, so,
Maybe we could do something about the rain.
yeah.
You want a big umbrella? Want a big umbrella?
Well, let's see on the slide. Let me see. 1, 2, 3,
Thank you, Ms. Pito.
6, 8,
Thanks.
16.
You guys ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. I am passing out, or actually Ms. Beto is to you, 2 things. One is a copy of the PowerPoint, but the other is a booklet, which is actually all the information that is on the Attorney General's website on the Missouri Sunshine Law. So I'm going to do my best to give you the information you need tonight, but I've got a short time period. So please keep that book as questions come up. Use it as a resource. It's a great place to look. I've been before you all a couple other times talking about the Sunshine Law. I think the last time was back in 2012. But tonight too, I just wanted to kind of give an overview and also talk a little bit more about meetings rather than just records, but we're going to talk about those too. So, the Missouri Sunshine Law, if for any question, just remember that the overriding principle is stated in the act itself, and it says the public policy is that records, meetings, and votes of the district are open to the public unless otherwise provided. So the presumption is always that something is open. And I'm trying to talk loud if you can't hear as it rains.
We're doing fine, it's much louder, better, thank you, Ron.
I'm doing fine.
As the law also says specifically that it's to be liberally construed in favor of meetings and records being opened, and the exceptions that are set forth therein are to be strictly construed. So the Sunshine Law governs records, meetings, and votes, and I want to talk about meetings first. The Act defines a meeting, stating a meeting subject to the Sunshine Law is defined in the statute as one of a public governmental body where public business is discussed, decided, or public policy formulated. So really there's two questions in deciding whether it is a meeting subject to the Sunshine Law. One is who is meeting, and two is what is the purpose of the meeting. As to who is meeting, the question is it a meeting of a public governmental body? And there is a quorum requirement. So for you all, that would mean anytime you have 4 board members present, that is a meeting of the Board of Education, and it does need to be noticed as such. You should know, though, that there is an exception that's come down in case law about that, and that is that it's generally a quorum, but if a public governmental body is using less than a quorum in an attempt to purposefully evade the requirements of the Sunshine Law, then the case law says that that also should be treated as a public meeting and noticed, etc.
Lisa,
Yes.
does this mean that if 3 board members get together to discuss an agenda, that that's legal? It's not a quorum.
I don't think 3 board members getting together to discuss the agenda is a violation of the Sunshine Law.
Thank you.
Because there's less than a quorum, unless you're purposefully only doing 3 to evade the requirements of the Sunshine Law.
Thank you.
But even if you look in here, when they talk about the questions, they bring up an instance where they talk about that, and that's where like the board has 2 meetings of 3 or 3 meetings, and then you try to make a decision, and basically you're making a decision in these small meetings that is a decision of the board of the whole, but you're just having several small meetings. So that's really what you got to watch out for. And the other requirement is whether public business is discussed. A meeting does not include an informal gathering for ministerial or social purposes where there's no intent to avoid the law. So if you attend a Rockwood Schools Foundation function that's purely social and there's more than 4 there, that's fine as long as there's no intent to use that to discuss public business. That's a social engagement.
That extends to even if all 7 of us decide to have a barbecue together, and we're not talking about school business.
Right.
They're rather socialized. It's not just that there's a quorum.
Right, you can all have a barbecue. I would caution you not to talk about school business.
But if there is 3 and we do get together to talk about the agenda, then that's the gray area that this case provided.
It's only gray. 3 is not you can have 3. That is not a meeting of the board under the Sunshine Law. The only exception is if there's a purposeful intent. The reason that you're doing that and having 3 is specifically to evade the requirements of the law, which I don't think is the purpose of why you're having 3 board members at an agenda meeting, but that would be the issue.
Wouldn't that be brought up as if you had a meeting with 3 and then one of those people met with 2 other board members to convey the contents of that previous meeting, then you're trying to circumvent the whole quorum.
It would be arguable, or even if you're trying, what the law is really designed to prevent is you as a board making decisions outside of the context of a public meeting. So especially if there's a topic that you're going to make a decision on,
let's say in this meeting, and you have several meetings of 2 or 3, and you discuss, and so you're basically kind of making your decision ahead of time, that would be where you would be concerned about evading the law.
Right. We're gonna keep beating this horse for just a second, because the issue's been real. In the past, 3 board members have gotten together to set the agenda.
Right.
But in setting the agenda, you are not making any district
Right.
decisions. You're setting a set of topics on what you're going to talk about at the board meeting.
Right.
So I would still contend you're not doing the district business. You're setting a plan for when you are going to do it.
I
But-
didn't hear the end.
What I say is that at that meeting, 3 board members are present and they're talking about what's going to be on the
Right.
agenda at the next board meeting. They're not making district decisions. They're talking about what topics are going to come up at that meeting.
Right.
So I would contend that that's not a meeting of the board.
From what you're telling me, I agree with that. One other thing I want to talk about on meetings is the Sunshine Law also applies to meetings held by conference call, video conference, internet chat, or internet message board. And most of those things you're going to know when you have a meeting. The concern that comes up is email. And we're going to talk about email in a few minutes about public records, but just think about it in the context of a meeting right now. Again, what the law is concerned with is with you all making a decision about something and not being at a called, noticed public meeting. So when you get in the situation, a simple email to the board is not a meeting, and that's fine. But when you get into these situations where you're all doing a reply to all, and you're all sitting at the courts look, and it's not Missouri, but the courts in other states have looked at situations where you're all maybe at the computer at the same time, and you're giving feedback, you're hitting reply to all, then you're hitting reply to all, you're hitting reply to all, and it all occurs within 20 minutes, a half an hour, an hour. You just have to be really watching those situations and make sure that you're not doing that. And if it gets to the point where it starts to look like that, one of you should say, hey, I think we should stop this. I'm concerned about this being a meeting, and let's talk about it on Thursday night, or send your comments just to the superintendent, or send your comments to the board president, just to avoid that situation. So it's something for you guys to look out for.
So is there a basic rule of thumb you could give us advice on emails? So if one of us sends an email to the whole board,
that's fine.
Do you?
In and of itself.
Okay.
As far as the meeting issue is concerned, as we're going to talk about in a minute, that's going to be a public record.
Right.
But that's fine.
But if you want to reply all and make some comment,
I think you can do that. That's not a meeting, especially
unless you're saying, hey, this is how I'm going to vote on this issue. I sure hope you all join me or something.
Right,
Something
and
goofy like that.
then Dr. Kinder responds back. I'm using this as an example. Dr. Kinder responds back 15 minutes later saying, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
And then Mrs. Rogers said, when you're having a conversation on the internet.
Yep.
So that's just what you got to look out for. And I don't mean to be vague about it. It's just the law is very.
You could argue that on your texting as well, right? It's not public
yeah, we're going to talk about
documents with an
texting
email.
too.
Okay, go ahead.
Because texting,
All right,
it's not
I'll
on
wait.
my next slide, but when we get to it.
All right.
So that's the law, basic law on what a meeting is under the Sunshine Law. So if it is a public meeting, what does the Sunshine Law require? Well, the Sunshine Law requires that notice be given of it, and the notice has to include the date, the time, the place, and a tentative agenda. Note that the law requires a tentative agenda. So a lot of times questions will come up, well, can we do this if it's not on the agenda, or we have this? And what that means is that it has to be in a manner that's reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered. The notice has to be posted 24 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting, and this doesn't include weekends or holidays. And if it's not 24 hours, there has to be a nature of the good cause justifying the departure from the requirements has to be stated in the minutes, and you have to give as much notice as you reasonably can. The thing to remember on this one is that, sometimes you think 24 hours, we haven't given 24 hours notice. If you have a real emergency, or you have something that really has a good cause for bringing it on to the agenda later, you can do that. It's just that you need to state in the agenda and in the minutes why you're departuring, why you couldn't make the 24-hour requirement. The other thing is that a closed meeting also has to comply with these requirements, except the notice has to only state the general reason for the closed meeting, for example, personnel, and not the specific topics. Yes?
I have a question.
Sure.
Just regarding the 24 hours, because I had a situation this week. Is it ever, like the public meeting, the agenda, should it ever be stated who posted that? Because I wasn't aware of that something was placed on the agenda on my behalf as an assumption. But once somebody informed me, hey, I put this on the agenda because I thought you wanted it on there, and I requested it to be removed because I never placed it on there, but we were close to the 24-hour mark. Should this date, time, should the agenda have who put it on there so there's not that confusion? Because I could have assumed that one of the other board members placed it on there versus it being placed on because of a courtesy to me, even though we weren't supposed to, it wasn't supposed to be on there.
And that's not required by the Sunshine Law.
Okay.
So that'd be a question of policy for you all, whether you want to identify, who's placing items on the agenda. Generally, your agenda is done by your superintendent along with the board president, do the agenda. As far as each matter, that's a matter of policy to be decided.
I was just thinking to avoid confusion because I was confused.
Are you referencing the PIN or the Sunshine Law?
I'm referencing the Sunshine Law. This week something was placed on the agenda.
The Sunshine Law.
No. This week something else was placed on the agenda and it had to be removed.
What was it?
It was the dress code again. When I didn't place it on the agenda, it was put on the agenda apparently on my behalf, but I didn't request it be on the agenda.
No.
So it had to be removed from the agenda.
But I think Gretchen, we were at the agenda setting meeting, we put it on there because that was
I said I didn't.
Okay, whatever.
This was obviously a
But it's-
miscommunication.
Matt, go ahead.
It's not a Sunshine Law.
Right,
issue.
that's not a Sunshine Law issue.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Gretchen brought up the Sunshine Law when we were having the conversation. and I
About
said-
yanking it from the agenda within the
Yeah.
24-hour period.
And I said, oh, well, I never put it on the agenda, so why would it,
Yep.
I never put it on the agenda, so
But the,
I never, do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah, but that's a separate issue
No, I
beyond
don't.
Sunshine Law.
That's
Well,
what
that's what
it
I brought up.
Can you take something off the agenda with less than 24 hours?
You can take it off the agenda, I
So
believe.
it's just adding topics.
Because the whole purpose of having the agenda out for 24 hours is so that the public can look at the agenda and say, oh, I'm interested in that topic. Now, if you take something off, you might have somebody not happy that they
Right.
came here
We try
for
to
something
keep
and you
that,
took it off.
just for the record, we try to keep that a minimum.
Right.
Not because we're playing around with the Sunshine Law, but out of a convenience to people
Right.
who might want to show up to speak to that agenda item.
Right.
And so that's the concern there, not compliance or non-compliance with Sunshine. Thank you.
You can also modify your agenda, move things around. By modify, I mean, you can move things Yes. around in the order, Yes. so. The Sunshine Law's concern is with you putting something on the agenda that the public wouldn't know you were gonna talk about. That's what that's what the Sunshine Law's concerned with.
Well, you can't veer from the agenda either and bring up and talk about something that's not on the agenda. Is that what you're saying?
Right, you shouldn't talk about something that's not on the agenda unless you have some reason that there couldn't have been notice for it. If it's an emergency or something that,
Right.
okay. Let's talk a little bit about whether a meeting can be closed and to what extent it can be closed. The statute gives specific situations under which a meeting can be closed, and actually there's 23 of them, and if you want to look at them all, you can look at them all in your book. But I'm going to talk about some of the ones that the district utilizes the most. The first one is legal actions, and specifically that says causes of action or litigation involving the district or privileged and confidential communications between the board and its attorney. The important thing to know here is it does include potential litigation. There doesn't have to actually be a lawsuit filed in order for the meeting to be closed. And it does include legal work product. And then the only other exception under the law is that if it has to do with a settlement agreement, the vote on a settlement agreement will become public when the settlement agreement is executed, unless a court orders otherwise.
Another exception that's used in the district a lot is for personnel information, and actually the Sunshine Law divides that up into two different sections. There's one for individually identifiable personnel records. Whenever those are discussed, the meeting can be closed, except the statute says that names, positions, salaries, and length of service are open information, public information.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So we had this issue back in March. So to clarify for the final time, at least with this board, we can come out in open session and discuss groups of people, groups of staff, and their salaries as a group and their pay plan. We can do that in open session. We just cannot get down to individual names with their salaries and any other high information.
Correct.
And I think I understand that it is permissible to discuss anything in public, right?
You can just, exactly, maybe I should have started with that too.
Some things reach the level of more appropriate and closed, but you can talk about anything.
Right, and there's some things from a legal standpoint, you know, if you're gonna, there's legal reasons why, for example, you don't want to talk about a specific personnel situation in open session, even though you can under the Sunshine Law.
Right, that's what I'm getting. It's not a violation of the Sunshine Law. It may be a really bad idea. But
Right.
It's not a violation of the Sunshine
Right.
Law. You might violate some other law in terms of personal information.
Right.
But I guess what I'm asking then, here, your bullet point under B, your names, positions, salaries, you can discuss that in open session? It's not
prohibited by the
advisable,
Sunshine Law.
but I thought we couldn't discuss individuals, although that is public information.
Yeah, and that comes up really more as a record. You know, if somebody makes a Sunshine Law request for personnel information, it's basically all closed except for the names, positions, salaries, and length of service.
Okay, so just kind of good practice, don't discuss individuals. We can, but don't, because it's kind of invasive. But we
Right.
can always discuss.
And I wouldn't want, like, if you have a personnel situation, you shouldn't
Right.
be discussing that. And that goes to the next exception too, which is specifically says hiring, any meetings that discuss the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees where personal information is discussed. Those are closed. However, any final vote that is taken to do one of those things, that would become public within 72 hours. And you're to notify the employee involved during that 72-hour period.
The vote is, but the discussion is not necessarily open
Exactly.
because of liability.
And the discussion doesn't become open either. I mean, I don't know that, you don't put a lot in your minutes anyway, but even if it's the vote itself, that's the only part that would become
Okay.
open. Okay, another common exception under which meetings can be closed is for real estate matters. Specifically, that's leasing, purchasing, sale, or where the knowledge might affect the consideration. So that's why that's closed. However, once the transaction is finally executed, it does become public. Another exception is for discussion of sealed bids, proposals, and documents related to negotiated contracts. Again, though, it will become, and this goes for records and meetings, becomes opened once bids are opened or the contract is executed or all proposals are rejected. And then finally, I kind of want to combine F and G. F is specifically stated in the Sunshine Law that this information is exempt. Records or meetings having to do with scholastic probation, expulsion, or graduation of identifiable individuals, including individual test or examination scores. And then finally, there's an exception in the Sunshine Law for records which are protected from disclosure by law, and that's where your FERPA fits in. As you all know, under the federal law FERPA and your policy and regulation 2400, there's only limited information about students that's allowed to be released. Okay, to go into closed session, the vote to close must be made in open session, and you have to state the exception that you're using. Important that I think you all need to know is that a board member may vote against going into a closed meeting if you do not believe it was properly closed under the Sunshine Law. You should state why you don't think it should go into closed session, and that will be entered into the minutes. All votes in closed session have to be taken by a roll call vote. And just as we discussed, there are votes that do become public, even though they're made in closed session. So that's meetings. Let's talk for a couple minutes about records. Public records are anything that is retained by or of a public governmental body. What is a public governmental body? We talked about that before, the quorum issue. The other thing that comes up, and I should have mentioned it, a committee can be in itself a public governmental body. So back when we were talking about the quorum requirement, if you have a committee of the board, that body itself, like if you have a meeting of a such and such committee, that needs to be noticed under the Sunshine Law. And that goes for records too. And the other thing about records is that when you're talking about records of a public governmental body, the superintendent can arguably be himself a public governmental body. So records that he receives could be, even if the entire board's not copied on them, could be subject to a Sunshine Law request. And I'd just like to point out number 2, because it's a newer thing, and I think it's important for everybody to know, is that the law now specifically says that records of a district which are maintained by private contractors on behalf of the district are subject to the Sunshine Law. It used to be that some public governmental bodies, not this one, but others, would have their contractors holding on to documents to try to avoid the Sunshine Law, and so the legislature went back after an Attorney General opinion and amended to include that. And when you have a request for public records, they can be exempt from disclosure for the 23 reasons that we just talked about before with respect to meetings. What's important to note here is that the law provides they're exempt to the extent they relate to those topics. So if you have an email that discusses a personnel issue, and then it also discusses dress code, or your lunchroom plans or whatever, the email, if somebody asks for that email, what would likely happen is the personnel information would be redacted out and the rest of it would be given. So the law requires that we give out as much as can possibly be given out. The procedures for a public record request, which you as board members don't have to deal with on a daily basis, but just so you know what they are. The response has to be acted upon as soon as possible and within 3 business days of the request. That does not mean that, for example, when Ms. Beto, who's the custodian, gets a request, she has to provide the documents within 3 days. She has to respond within 3 days. And if it's something that's going to take longer, she can explain why it's going to take longer and give an estimate of when they will be available. The district, there are limits on the scope, and again, this is something that comes up a lot, and I talk to Ms. Beto a lot, is that the district has to be able to identify records with reasonable specificity in order to be able to provide access to them, but is not required to conduct research on behalf of persons requesting access. A lot of times the district will get a request for a study or a report that the district simply doesn't have, and the district's not obligated to go out and do that in order to provide it. The Sunshine Law only applies to documents that are already in existence. This also comes up a lot when sometimes people will write questions instead of actually asking for documents. And if there are questions that there's no specific document that answers a question, then again, it's not really a proper Sunshine Law request, and the district doesn't have to provide anything in response.
Does that include an individual board member asking for research?
Now, well, an individual board member, that wouldn't be, their request isn't made under the Sunshine Law. Their request is made as a board member, which is a different situation.
As an individual, as a parent?
As a parent, yes. So if a parent would ask, I mean, you have to I'm looking at it from the legal issue of when you get a Sunshine Law request.
Right. But if I'm a board member, but I'm also a parent, and I ask you to research, that you're not required to.
you're not required to under the Sunshine Law. You're required to provide documents that exist already. So you're not required to do something. You may, as a parent, ask the superintendent to look into an issue, and you're not asking that under the Sunshine Law.
But as board members, we're not elevated to a status that we can just ask and it's done.
To ask, no, you have a process within the board for how you deal with requests from board members.
Okay.
Okay, and then, as you all know, there are fees that can be charged for Sunshine Law requests. It's limited to 10 cents a page, plus the average hourly rate of pay for clerical staff and the actual rate of research time. You don't have to charge for a Sunshine Law request, although nowadays almost every entity is in various contexts. Yes?
I associate with a question board member Kinder asked that actually isn't associated with the Sunshine Law, but the research for a board member to, if there's an agenda item and a board member requests additional information to make a proper decision. I'm not sure what that had to do with the Sunshine Law, but is that outside of what a board member should do?
No, that's within it, I would think.
Again, that's
not a Sunshine
this
Law.
totally is, Mr.
We're
Kinder,
going
Dr.
into
Kinder's
policy,
question and your question
procedures,
are not
yeah.
Sunshine Law issues.
He said if a board member asks for additional research.
Okay.
Next.
And Ms. Cranston, could I make a comment here real quickly? We have complied with some Sunshine Law requests in the past that if we really went, in most cases, I'm going to say we waived the fees for those. And would I be correct in saying that that's not a nickel and dime expense to the district because it takes people from your department a great deal of time to go back and do the redacting and do the production of these kinds of documents?
We typically have not charged a fee. However, there have been times where, given the nature of the request and the amount of time that it would take,
Mm-hmm.
we have notified the requestor of that, and in every situation, they have withdrawn that request with the exception of a couple of news reporters. And
Okay.
they went ahead and paid it.
Right.
Excuse me.
Give that lady some water.
Okay,
Sorry, Ms.
no, that's fine. I'm almost done, but let's
All right.
talk for a minute about emails. You know, there was some discussion a few years back of whether they were even public, and you all know the answer is yes. Emails can be public records. As far as the board's concerned, any email that involves a quorum of the board, and again, think about the committee. So if you have emails going to committee of the board, those would be records of a public governmental body and would be subject to a Sunshine Law request. Note that the statute specifically requires members who electronically transmit messages relating to public business to concurrently transmit the message to the member's office computer or the custodian of records. So that means if you're sending emails about board business, it needs to be from your Rockwood account, or Ms. Vito needs to be copied on it. I think your policy may be that she's still copied on it, which is a good practice, because then we know that she has everything, and if a request is made, she doesn't have to go gather things, or a search doesn't have to be done. But as far as the law is concerned, you have to do one or the other. The other thing that I want to point out here is note that it says members who electronically transmit messages. And this, the Attorney General has not gotten into it yet, and the courts haven't gotten into it yet, but the language of it really, that's a text message too. So I would say that a text message should be treated the same as an email, and if it involves a quorum of the board, it needs to be, Ms. Vito needs to be included, and really, as your attorney, I would prefer if it's the whole board doing it, you would do it by email. If it's talking about substantive board business.
Right. Just for clarification, within the last week, I wrote to Ms. Mondel to ask how her son had done at a cross-country meet. That's not...
No. And the
that's
other
not
thing,
what you're talking
it's not public business.
Right.
But also, two board members is not...
Right. I just
public
wanted
record, yeah.
clarification for that.
Yeah.
Because
That was appreciated, thank you.
Lisa, also for clarification, I want to make sure that this is an okay practice, and if it's not, I won't do it anymore, but in an attempt to be a good communicator, when I send emails to the board, I often follow that up with a text that just says, please read your email, or I just sent an email. Sometimes I'll say what it's about. I'll say I just sent you an email about X. The only replies I ever get are received it, got it, and some do and some don't. Some say thank you. And I want to say that maybe there's a few times when there's something pending today, just this afternoon, for instance, on the fly, half of Fenton's power went out. And so parent-teacher conferences at Summit High School were canceled. And so I never like the board. I never like to think about them being at the store or the gas station and somebody saying something to them about the district, and as a governing official, they'd say, I don't know what you're talking about. So I feel like I have an obligation. And that's a quick way. So I sent them a text and I said, FYI, because of the power outages at Summit High School, no parent-teacher conferences tonight.
I think that's fine. First of all, this is not a clear area of the law. But
Sure.
what I would recommend, as long as you're not talking about substantive issues, like when you're emailing them and saying read your email, when you're texting them and saying read your email, that's
Sure.
that's fine. To be very cautious, maybe if you do something where it is substantive, like the power's out, why don't you also include your email address, yours, because then it will end up on your computer, and we will have a record of that's
Yeah.
sent.
Sure, I think it's probably easier just to keep it to read your email.
Yeah.
And I'll just make sure that, and if I can't do it on the fly, I'll ask Kim, hey, or one of my assistants, just
But as
send
long as
something.
it's not the substantive discussion,
It never is.
Yeah.
It never is. Okay, thanks.
Okay, and I just want to point out for you that when these questions come up, these are your policies and that deal with these issues. Also, if you have a pen, you might want to write down 0410, which I should have included. That's on meetings generally. I want you to know about what the fines and the liability can be if you violate the Sunshine Law. There is a violation called if you purposefully violate the Sunshine Law, you can be an individual board member, or it can be the board as a whole, depending on who's purposely violating the law. It'd be a civil penalty of up to $5,000 in cost and attorney's fees. There's also a violation that you can have that's when you knowingly violate the Sunshine Law, and that's subject to a civil penalty of up to $1,000, and a court may award cost and attorney's fees. The courts really have jurisdiction of the amount of the fine, and they can decide what it would be, and they're going to look at the size of the jurisdiction, the seriousness of the offense, and whether the district or board or the member has previously violated the law. Another thing, a court can avoid an action that's taken, which is something to think about if something's done in violation of the Sunshine Law. Again, it has to be purposefully or knowingly violated. And then the statute does provide a specific option for you if you are in doubt as to whether something is a violation of the Sunshine Law. You can bring a lawsuit to get it answered. You can ask for an attorney general opinion, or you can get a private attorney written opinion. And I think we advised you all before that that's a good route to go, because then that would protect you in the event. Not only are you getting legal advice in advance, but it would protect you in the event a lawsuit is brought. These are common mistakes. You guys, I have to say, these aren't your mistakes. But I had them in here. The minutes have not been approved by the board, so I don't have to release them. That's not true. As soon as the minutes are drafted, they are released, but it's marked in draft form. 2, we talked about, I have to prepare a separate report and prepare a narrative response to the public records request. That's not true. When it's a request under the Sunshine Law, it's to provide documents that are already in existence. 3, the district's private contractors have the records, not the district, so I don't need to provide the documents. That's not true. The district can charge the newspaper $1 per page if we want. That's not true.
Can we
And
charge,
finally,
can we charge more?
$2?
no,
She's
10
laughing.
cents, and it's been 10 cents forever, too.
She's laughing over there.
My final one, which I think you all know, but if I email all the board members and I mark it confidential, it will not be a public document. That is not true. Your emails to the whole entire board are all public records. They will be exempt only if you fit in one of those 23 exceptions. And it doesn't matter if you put confidential, privileged, whatever you put on it, doesn't matter. So that's tried to be a quick overview. Does anybody have any more questions?
Thank you. That's not, questions from the board? Anyone?
Can I ask?
Yes.
One other thing that I would point out for some new board members, which you may not be aware, in addition to always complying to the requests for the Sunshine Law information, we post that information on the district website. So at any time, anyone can go there and look and see, here were the Sunshine Law requests, here's when it was filled, here's who made the request. So we respond within the 3 days, we always do that, then we provide the information, and we post that on the district website.
Where on the district website?
It is under the board page.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. The next item on the agenda is to look at the proposed agenda for October the 16th. Ms. Beto, I'm going to ask you again to remind me that we may want to put the Pin Farm discussion on there if we can.
Yes,
Okay.
I think
So
so.
when we look at that and do the presentation on that next time, if possible. All right. Anything else?
It's not really, it's kind of related to the COPE committee report about some of these board training. I found that MSBA offers for a flat $75 fee online training for all 7 board members, 1 fee per module. There's like 4 or 5 topics. And maybe you could get us access to that?
The MSBA website has a lot of free trainings too. If you go to the board member
I'm on it right
section
now.
of it, there are a lot of free trainings. They also will come in person for $150 an hour plus expense for gas. They also will do that. And there is the one online, if we were all together at the same time. If one of our professional development sessions could be the online one that you mentioned,
Yeah,
that
the
may be
online-
an option also.
The online whole board training is $75 for all board members and the super, so 8 people. Each module, Sunshine Law, Nepotism and Conflict of Interest, the Basics of Student Achievement in Missouri, and Superintendent Evaluation video series. So, I think for $75, if folks are interested, it might be something we could do on our own. You have access for like 90 days.
Do we need to put the PIN rules on there, Debbie?
Yeah, we're gonna.
I have that as,
Yeah,
I'll use that on the
agenda
agenda.
meeting.
We're trying to put that on the 16th.
We also, on October 16th, we will also have an item that informs us about the Monsanto Biodiesel Education
Right.
Center. There'll be a ribbon cutting on November 5th, so we want to talk about that a little bit at that October 16th board meeting. So that will be added, that's not on this list here.
Right.
It came in a little bit later, so we'll add that.
We never got an official legal opinion as far as like the gun bill, and I know our attorney said that she would come for free like to our meetings, so I don't know if that's something that could be added, so we
Okay,
Have.
okay. And then what I do with these suggestions is I gather them, and then when I meet with the board president and superintendent, and they set the agenda, then, these are the items that I'll share with them that have been requested to be on the agenda.
What about Amendment 3?
And Amendment 3, we can, we'll bring that to their attention also, and that may be on there.
Eric, did
We
you plan
also-
on talking about Amendment 3?
Not tonight.
No, not
I was
tonight.
actually saving that. I got some information about that today. If anyone, I know all of us are very well aware of Amendment 3, and I had a legal opinion given to me that any board member can make a comment at board comments before the election about Amendment 3. However, we won't be passing any resolution, as I understand it. But that's outside of our procedures. Legal, but procedural.
Are you sure?
It's local, it's We had Lisa give a...
Lisa, if you come up and give us that opinion again, please. God bless you.
Keep my ring on.
You will recall, Dr. Kinder, that the district has spent a lot of time with various election issues in enacting its policy and regulation 0380, and it's a little more restrictive than the law. And the board in the past, in passing that policy, has kind of made the decision that the board would not be, the board itself would not be involved as a whole in election issues because of all the issues that have come up in the past. And so that would, if you were to continue to follow that policy, that would apply to the resolution also. So the board members individually can make whatever comments you want to make, but
And then we have to cowboy up and take whatever comes as individuals for our comments in that case.
yeah, as individuals. But the board as a whole, I would be concerned that
That's our policy.
right.
Right, that's a Rockwood policy. That's what I say, legally and Rockwood procedurally are two different things. And in this case, our procedures, if you recall, the tobacco people, when they were wanting to raise the tobacco tax, wanted us to pass one.
Right. Your
And so-
policy is more, your policy is restricted.
I was gonna say, because there's well over 100 plus districts that
Right.
have made statements.
Right.
Okay.
Well over 100. Ms. Fisher, before you leave, it's on our future agenda and events to attend. I'm going to publicly thank you. It says here Monday, October 13th, all of us board members are invited to eat lunch at a school for National School Lunch Week. Ms. Fisher is very kind because it's SLU. I have a quarter test on Monday, but on Tuesday the 14th, I had a day out of school that I could go, so she very graciously. So can I make that same offer to any board member, that if you get in touch with Ms. Fisher, that's why I asked you to hang, because if you have a conflict but you could do it one other day that week, she's very kind about accommodating us, and I personally appreciate that. Thank you.
Is that in our policy that she can do that?
We'll look it up. All
And
right.
if you'd like to eat with me for any reason, I don't think you would, Dr. Kinder, but I'll be taking part as well that week.
All right, very good. Anything else as far as, all right? I'll remind the board not to get too happy. We're going back into closed session, please.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, Gretchen, do we need a motion to that effect?
You called a recess, we can go back.
Okay, so we're recessing here. We're recessing and going back into closed. We haven't had enough fun yet.